Hello and welcome to Accounting Standards and Regulation at UTS. My name's Robert Trankowski and I'll be the lecturer for the subject during this semester. So I'm the coordinator. These are my contact details. If you need to contact me, please send an email. An important point to make, please, whenever you email any of the staff in this subject, always use your UTS email. That's the only way we know it's you. In order to protect your personal information, it's essential that you use your UTS email to email us. The tutors on the subject this semester will be Margot Davini and Charles Lowe, and I'll be taking some tutorials as well. Margot and Charles have been teaching this subject for a very long time, and I've been teaching this subject or subjects like it for, well, let's just say a very long time. Administration relating to the subject. You're probably familiar with the fact that subject materials are available on UTS Online, and I'll take you through some of the key things there at the beginning of the first lecture before we get stuck into the material. So what you've got up there are self-study questions with solutions. You've got the tutorial problems to be done for each week's homework and in class, and you've got the weekly lecture materials. And be careful when you download the lecture materials. Often they're not just slides. Every time we have slides, we give you the PowerPoint and the PDF, so you can choose which file you like. But sometimes there'll be additional materials, like lecture demos or sometimes Excel spreadsheets. So just have a look at what's there. Don't just download one file and assume you have everything. So that's what you've got in UTS Online. The textbooks for this subject, sorry, I haven't updated the 2017 to 2019, but it's actually good that came up because I don't want you to buy the financial reporting handbook. I will talk about it briefly in the lecture, but turns out that a lot of the material in the lecture, in the financial reporting handbook, is actually available on the website of the regulator, AASB. So I'll tell you how to get that in the course of the lectures. The textbook by Loftus and others, second edition, is essential. All of the problems that are set from there. And that's where we want you to do most of the readings from. Although there are a few additional readings we've put up on UTS Online for the first few weeks by my colleague Peter Wells. And while I'm at it, on UTS Online also you'll find various videos done over time, either by my colleague Peter Wells or by my colleague David Bond, and one or two done by me. So those are there to help you understand the material in the subject. So please look through what is available on UTS Online. Wiley Plus. Wiley is the company that makes the textbook, and Wiley Plus is an online system that supports it. Now, when you buy the textbook, if you've had a look at the materials on UTS Online, there is a choice of buying just an electronic text. Bear in mind, though, that this subject is open book. Obviously, you can't take an electronic text into the final exam. Is it essential to have the book in the final exam? I don't think so. I actually think it's sort of a security blanket. But if you think you're likely to want to take the textbook into the exam, then please, obviously, get a paper one. So coming back to Wiley Plus, what is Wiley Plus? Wiley Plus is an online testing system. And you'll find, I think under assignments on UTS Online, there is a link to the Wiley Plus services for this subject. You need to have a look at those for two reasons. The most important reason is one of the two assignments is essentially a quiz, a 20% quiz covering weeks 1 to 6, and that is done through the Wiley Plus system. Secondly, we have put up on Wiley Plus weekly quizzes that are not accessible. We don't look at the results, but they are there to help you gauge your progress and work out how well you're going in the subject and whether you need help. So what I would like you to do is, as soon as the semester starts, make sure you can connect into Wiley Plus, do the weekly quizzes that test your progress, make sure that that system works. We will find it difficult to sort out any problems with Wiley Plus if you just contact us in the first hour that the main assignment, the assessable assignment quiz, is open. So please make sure that's working within the first 2 or 3 weeks of semester. So I've addressed those issues. Now bear in mind that tutorials start in week 1, even though the material was lagged. So what that means is that the topic 1 material will be covered in tutorial 2. So what do we cover in the week 1 tutorial? If you have a look on UTS Online and you download the list of tutorial questions, we have given you some introductory questions that relate to the introductory material that we want you to prepare for week 1. So we want you to hit the ground running in this subject. There's a lot to cover and you need to start focusing from week 1. And that means tutorials in week 1 are essential. Now, we've put some web links up on UTS Online. We've got links to the regulators, so the people that set the relevant rules. Primarily, this is going to be the International Accounting Standards Board, who set the International Financial Reporting Standards, and the Australian Accounting Standards Board that sets the Australian Accounting Standards, which, as I'll tell you in class, are basically a copy of the international ones. We've also got the links to the professional bodies, or some of the key professional bodies. So Chartered Accountants Australia New Zealand, CPA Australia, and the Association of Chartered Cost Accountants. Okay, a few web links up there as well to Deloitte. Deloitte, and most of the large accounting firms do this, tend to have little information services that help you understand the accounting standards. Deloitte's one is called IAS Plus. So those little documents are basically a quick way of understanding what each accounting standard, each accounting rule requires. They also provide standard form reports. It's actually surprising, but when people go out to work as accountants, they don't actually remember all the things they need to do. And what they do is they use these standard form reports as sort of checklists to make sure they've reported and disclosed everything they need to and done so in the way that they need to. So please have a look at Deloitte's standard form reports. They've also got some e-learning materials. Okay. Now, the subject philosophy. Look, the subject philosophy here is the same as elsewhere. Focus, focus, focus. You are going to come out of this subject being able to read, understand, and apply accounting rules. Now, the way we're going to do this is we're going to work we can't focus on all accounting standards. We're going to focus on accounting standards that illustrate key measurement and recognition solutions that the standard setters have come up with. So we're going to cover, for example, the standard on property, plant and equipment, and we will talk about revaluation. If you understand how that works, then if you ever find yourself needing to account for investment properties, the rules are actually quite similar. You'll understand most of the concepts. So there are a bunch of key concepts that appear across a number of accounting standards, and we're going to cover, I guess, some of the key accounting standards that introduce you to as many of those concepts as possible. So when you see a new accounting standard that you haven't seen before, you will feel comfortable with the way that it addresses the issue that it's addressing. Okay, now because of that, it is essential that we cover the material in a particular way. We're going to start with some basic topics. We're going to talk about assets, then we'll look at intangible assets, then we'll look at liabilities. So we're covering the basics, but we're looking at complex measurement phenomena and issues there. And then on top of that, we're going to build some of the more complex topics like foreign currency, financial instruments, leases, income tax. So the way we're moving through this subject is from simple to complex. We're going to start you with basic concepts, and then we're going to flesh out those concepts as we go through. Okay, so essentially, hopefully you end up understanding accounting, or you understand financial reporting as being built up of a series of building blocks. Hopefully it'll also make the learning and the knowledge manageable. Okay. Now, one very important point that I need to make to you about the big picture in this subject and subjects similar to this. Accounting standards, even though we're going to see those building blocks, accounting standards are not necessarily consistent. They are the outcome of a political process. Setting accounting rules is political. What that essentially means is that some standards that we're going to see seem a little bit weird. So if your attitude to this subject was saying, look, there's a bunch of rules, I'm just going to remember them, it isn't really going to work for you for two reasons. Unless you understand them, it's hard to apply them, especially with some of the more complex rules. And remembering things that are inconsistent, especially when they're really weird, is actually quite difficult. So this subject actually has three legs on which it stands, I guess. One is you need to understand the series of rules that govern financial reporting. Yeah, okay, that's cool. I think you were expecting that. Secondly, you need to understand the way that accounting rules are used. So, accounting regulation is there to achieve two things. Firstly, it's there to provide information that's useful for decision makers. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in week 1. So the information role and how accounting helps inform people is quite important. However, because accounting standards are political, there's a little bit of inconsistency there. The other component of this subject that is fundamental is understanding the incentives that people involved in accounting regulation have. Okay, managers want to look good. That means that if they've got any accounting choices, to the extent possible, they will try to put a spin on those numbers to make themselves look good, make themselves look profitable, make themselves look low risk. So whenever there are accounting choices, there are incentives. If somebody gave you a choice of recording something as an asset or an expense, what would you choose? You choose an asset, right? It would make your profit bigger because there's less expenses, and it would make your balance sheet look stronger. So we know that those incentives drive managers. Unfettered, they would do those sort of things. Now, regulators also know this. So in certain situations, like intangible assets, where measurement is a real problem, and the only people who know the asset very well are the managers, it's very hard to rely on managers to report correctly because we know that managers are driven by these incentives. So in situations where measurement is problematic, and we know that people are likely to exploit the flexibility that accounting gives them, the regulators address the fact that these incentives drive accounting standards and accounting behavior. Anyway, you need to understand these motivations. We'll talk about that more in class. The subject philosophy is generally, the one that I've already described. We want you to complete topics on a timely basis because each week will build on the previous week. To some extent, they're independent, like liabilities are independent of assets, but they have a lot of things in common. And as soon as we finish liabilities, we're starting to build on top of those liabilities. So you can't treat each week as independent. You really need to be on top of things as we go through. Don't wait till the assessment week. Please do those weekly Wiley Plus quizzes to make sure that you're on top of things. Do the tutorial homework. Do the self-study. As soon as you have a problem, raise it. Raise it on UTS Online, the discussion boards. Raise it with your tutor, or just raise it with me after a lecture. Okay, it's important that you keep on top of things. So, you can't just learn the topics in the exam. Please bear in mind, I'm not going to tell you what the exam topics are. In fact, I guess my strategy is I'm probably going to choose a random 2 or 3 topics, and that will be the exam. Right? You won't know which random topics they are, so you have to be across all of it. You have to be across all the material and confident with all the material in the subject. But I'll give you more guidance about the final exam as we get closer to that. Okay, so what I want you to do now, be prepared. Download the outline, download the topic list, download the list of tutorials and self-study problems, and read the online material that we've already put up. So those are the 2 readings by Peter Wells, and you'll find that under the weekly materials under week 0 and week 1. So read his chapter on functions of general purpose financial reporting and on the regulatory framework. You should have those read before you come to the week 1 lecture. And please prep the material, so we call it the week 00 material, in preparation for the tutorials in week 1. So let the course begin. I don't think it's going to be hugely hard. I think it's going to be rewarding. And I think it's going to be fun. If this was just a regulation subject, it would be boring and dry. But the really cool thing about it is we get to talk about incentives, we get to talk about motivations, and we get to see how that interacts with accounting. And that's why I really love teaching the subject. Okay, I look forward to seeing you in class.